Do you think trainers should take steroids and performance enhancing drugs?
I do think you would probably make more money because you would put on the facade that you are in better shape. And I do think that in the social media world, it really is about like being the part and playing the part and all of that.
You mentioned obviously you've been a professional athlete, you now have a hugely successful business. Do you think you've changed as a person as you've gained more success in your business?
A little bit. I do feel like, and this is probably similar to you as well, like if I make X amount, I think I'll be pretty happy. And then you get there and you're like, ooh.
95% of the world are sheep and the 5% of the wolves. And like, if you look at the wealthy people in the world versus the non-wealthy, that's really the way it works. And I think you have to identify what side of the fence you want to sit on and where you want to be in the pecking order. And I think that's also your ability, as you said, to lead, but also to help people. And then also probably thirdly, to be decisive and do the things that other people aren't willing to do. So today we've got a ripper of a podcast. We've got my good friend Ryan Fisher, who I've dragged over all the way from Newport Beach, California, who just crushed our live event this weekend. Ryan has one of the biggest fitness apps in the world with over 40,000 clients. He was formerly one of the best CrossFit athletes in the world before getting kicked out, threatening to kill someone. And today's going to be a ripper of a podcast. So thank you for your time, Ryan.
Thanks, man. I'm actually really excited to be here. Dubai is... It's such a great place. I feel like a lot of people give it a bad name, and I'm like, I don't see any of that. I just see awesomeness the whole time.
Okay, so let's start with that. Why do you think some people in the West, let's say, give Dubai a bad name? Like, what things have you heard?
It's not about like hearing it. It's about like you see all the flashy cars, you see all the things, and you're just like, oh, I bet everyone in there is like materialistic and all of that. It's probably like Miami times like 10, and then it's just not. I feel like there's a really good mix of people who want to grind really hard, and just like regular people who are just here having a good time, escaping the UK. I've been to the UK. I've had a lot of great times in London. I've met a lot of amazing people from London, including yourself. Like, I shouldn't say like you're not maybe from London, but from the UK. But for some reason, it is the only country I have ever met someone who has, they've never said, I love the UK. Every single time they're like, oh, the fuck is shit. Like, that's why I just come here. So like people always just leave the UK and like no one's ever proud of it. It's kind of funny.
I think that's fair. I think it's actually a sad state of affairs. I would say national pride is something British people don't have anymore. Like, which ironically, 150 years ago, we're the biggest empire in the world. Now the country is, quite frankly, a bit of a joke, is a bit of a sad state of affairs, but that's a whole nother matter. One of the first questions I wanted to get into, and we actually just filmed a YouTube video on this, and obviously a big demographic of our audience are trainers. Do you think trainers should take steroids and performance enhancing drugs?
Tough. I do think you would probably make more money because you would put on the facade that you are in better shape. And I do think that in the social media world, it really is about like being the part and playing the part and all of that. However, having said that, I have never taken steroids and I feel like I've done just fine. However, I will say that I've been a professional athlete for my entire life. So like I'm putting in significantly more hours and effort and stuff into the gym. And a lot of people always ask me like, how do you stay motivated all the time? I'm like, well, if your bank account was directly correlated to how you looked, I bet you wouldn't have that much, issues like staying motivated. So for me, I'm always like, even earlier you were like, do you want to have a cookie or whatever? And I was like, no, I don't have cookies because like in my head, I'm like, obviously I could have the cookie, but it's like, I might make less money if I get addicted to having fucking cookies. So I'm just like, no cookies. You know what I mean? Like it is what it is. But I do think if I was somebody who wanted to start being in the industry, I mean, it's only going to help you to be in better shape. The one thing though that bothers me is I do think if you do it, just say that you do it. You know what I mean? Like, or don't say anything, but don't say that you don't do it. Cause I don't like that. Cause nobody cares anymore, in my opinion. I
agree. And I think one of the good things now is it's very open and transparent.
It's very open.
Maybe when I first came into the industry, it was a very taboo thing. Whereas you could probably think of the first person I am straight away with.
Yeah.
In terms of like, there's a lot of big names in the industry who proclaim they're natural, where I'm like, dude, I know you take like tanning jabs and melanotan and shit. So like the reality is if you're taking that, then you're going to be taking other substances alongside that.
100%. And I think like when you really get into this and you understand there's a lot of people who do those things way more than you can imagine. It's so many people. There's also a lot of people who do that stuff and still don't look very good. So to say that like that's the thing that like unlocked this physique for you is not necessarily accurate. So I still think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done regardless. I just don't like when people claim lifetime natural. I almost feel like every time someone who claims lifetime natural, it's like blatantly that they've used drugs before, in my opinion. Because if you're a lifetime natural, you just don't say shit. You just live. Like, I don't take anything, and I have never said I'm lifetime natural. I just do my thing.
If I haven't taken anything today, am I 24 hours natural? With that, how prevalent do you think performance enhancing drugs are in sports, maybe even things like CrossFit?
Man, I've been in sports a really long time. I used to live in the Olympic Training Center, and that was the only thing that we talked about was like doing drugs, because like,
really,
there's nothing else to do. You're with a bunch of dudes, you're in the cafeteria, you train all day. And at the end of the day, I think like, you know, one of the most common things I talked about with my buddies back then was like, what could we take and not get in trouble? You know what I mean? So we were definitely against like taking really gnarly stuff, but we're like, what could we take and still not get in trouble? So that was things like HGH, like insulin, like some of these things that really couldn't be tested in urine, but like in a bloodstream kind of thing, or bloodstream, in a blood test, but like not in like a urine stream. So those are things that we talked about quite a bit. And having not taken anabolics, I have taken HGH back in the day. I have taken insulin back in the day. That was things that I definitely messed around with. That immediately stopped when I took too much insulin one day and thought I was going to fucking die. And I was driving home, and I'll never forget, like, I just ran every red light. I was going fucking crazy. I went to like the nearest gas station and just started guzzling Gatorades and eating Snickers bars. And the guy's like, you have to pay for that. I was like, I'm just going to fucking die right now. I got to get this done. And I was like, all right, I'm never doing this ever again.
Was that fast acting insulin and you took too much?
Yes, it's Humalog.
How did you just take shitloads accidentally?
I was trying to take like 5 post-workout. You know what happened? Do you know that guy, Victor Conti?
Yeah.
So he was the guy who...
He was the big Olympics drug guy, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
and he's the one he's responsible for all these people failing their tests. But when I was younger, I remember the letter that he had written to like Dwayne Chambers or whatever that wound up becoming public. Yeah. In that letter, it was like, take this. And this is like when I was in the Olympics, and I was like, oh, this is literally a blueprint to become a fucking savage. And I was young enough where it was like, I'm just going to do it. And the younger you are, the less you care about like the repercussions of doing anything. And I remember, I remember when I was in college, I went to college for exercise physiology, nutrition, like all that stuff, super nerd. And I remember specifically in one of my classes, I can't remember which one it was, but they asked a bunch of kids in college, if you could win everything for the next 5 or 10 years, I couldn't remember if it was 5 or 10 years. If you could win everything, be the most famous person on the planet, just crush everyone in every single thing, but you would die at the end of that, would you still do the drug? And it was like 80% of people said yes. And it's crazy to look back on that now, because I feel like there's no chance I would say yes to that. But back then, when I was talking about all these things, I would have done it. It was it's mind blowing to me that I would do that. And to be fair, I still, to this day, I genuinely feel like the sport of bodybuilding and like the things that are going on with like CBum and like a lot of these like really, really big athletes being glorified for taking huge amounts of drugs. Granted, they are amazing at their craft. Like, I will not say you're not an athlete. I will not say you are not incredibly impressive. But these people are shortening their lifespan and we're glorifying it. And I think it's very strange. I just think it's very strange.